So it's time to talk top transfer targets. We're picking the top teams, historically the top teams as well. Can put some names out to you. But I suppose you can have a bit of an outlier as well if you want, because it's a dream January transfer position, a name that immediately improves the top Premier League sides. We're going to go with Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Chelsea and Spurs. Let me just throw a few names out to you just so it's in your head, and then we'll see where you're thinking. Ivan Toney, Victor Osimhen, Jadon Sancho could be on the move somewhere else, Calvin Phillips. These are some names coming up. Todibo of Nice, Seru Girassi of Stuttgart, of course, Conor Gallagher of Chelsea. Just a few names to put out there. Let me give you first Liverpool, dream position, dream player for this January transfer window.
Kylian Mbappe. Look, you know, the thing about, I know it's nearly impossible, but it keeps, this rumor won't die. And you know what happens when it won't die? And, you know, Real Madrid obviously going to be favorites, but they better pull that trigger soon somehow. You know, with Liverpool, obviously the big issue is financially. I don't know how Liverpool and FSG would ever go for something like that. You know, even his salary, right? There would be a long line to Jurgen Klopp's office from everybody else on that team. But this rumor just won't die, and Liverpool is one of the best teams in the world historically and now, and I think they should be in for players like that, even if it's just pretending that they want it, right? They should be out there saying, yeah, if it's workable, we get him. But being more realistic, I don't think they'll get anybody that's going to immediately change the way they play, but they have a player that I think is very, very much needed positionally, and a player that I think if he even plays 3 or 4 good games, those 3 or 4 games could decide the title, and that's Thiago Alcantara, because it's crying for a player like that in that midfield. Liverpool doesn't have it. Liverpool can use a distributor, a visionary, somebody that can change the point of attack, right? Endo's not going to do that. Yeah, he's been doing well. He can disrupt play, but, you know, he can't play a long ball for 30 yards to save his life. Aside from that Fulham goal, he's not a player that can strike the ball from distance. Defensive-minded, fair play, and he's done much better than I thought. But that midfield needs Thiago Alcantara. And supposedly, although we've heard that, you know, he may be back at the end of January. But I think if you get him at the right point of the season, if it's March, April, and he gives you that quality that he has, even for 3 or 4 or 5 games, that may be just enough. So recover Thiago Alcantara at the moment.
Okay. Arsenal, striker?
Yeah, I mean, Ivan Toney makes sense. I don't know how long it's going to take him, you know, to pick up speed and get back to it. I know he's been training for a long time. I don't think it's an issue. He knows the league. He knows how to score in this league. So I think it seems that Arsenal are serious about him. And I think he changes the mentality of that team, right? All of a sudden, that depth and maybe, you know, a lot of times it's just the narrative. That's the worst thing, because players listen to it, and so I think if that's possible, then I go for it.
Manchester City.
Manchester City, nothing. There's no need. They won't do it. It'll be, you know, a young player that's going to be integrated into the team next year when 1 or 2 others leave. If you look at that team and that squad, and you look at the players like De Bruyne coming back, John Stones, because he really hasn't gotten going, Erling Haaland, there's so much there. There's enough there to win the Premier League and the Champions League, of course. It's just the formula hasn't been there just yet. The partnership in the back, not just centrally, but all over the place, with the exception of Kyle Walker. But no changes needed. None will happen.
Okay. Manchester United.
I mean, just about everywhere. As I said, this is nothing that they do in January is going to change drastically what Manchester United are and what they will be. This is a long-term plan that I hope is being put together, because, I mean, which player would really want to come to Manchester United? A player of note, a seasoned player, and I'm not talking of the likes of Varane, Casemiro, that age, but, you know, a very, very good player that would see this situation as good right now, to jump in with so much criticism. I think it's going to be difficult. I also think that Man United at this stage would be taken advantage of. If you really go in for a big name, they will greatly overpay because they're desperate. So I mean, throwing any name is it's useless. I think it's if they get anybody is thinking with future in mind.
Do you think, just to carry on with that Manchester United one, when there are some big names, do you think that agents are looking at this type of thing and advising their players, or do you think the players are put off, or is the name of Manchester United and the magnitude of the club still big enough that it still has the prestige to be able to go there?
It may be big enough. Everything that I've said, I mean it, but I'm glad that you kind of followed up with that because there is hope. Because there's finding an organization. I mean, remember, forget the players, forget the way they play, forget Ten Hag. The issues were deeper. There was no structure above, right? There was nobody there that you would trust and say things are going to change. You'd say it's going to be more of the same. Who's making the decisions? Who's buying the players? Why are they buying the players? Is there a plan in place? So with Ratcliffe now and a significant investment, right? I think that this may change, but I still think that this is going to be more for the future. But I think, as much as I've said that who would want to come, I think if the agents and the players have a clear plan from a new man in charge on the sporting side, say this will change, then I can see some maybe, just maybe thinking, okay, I'm going to trust that. But is it going to happen in January? That's the big question mark, right? Because a lot of the paperwork hasn't gone through just yet, because this is a massive investment that's got to clear not just the Premier League, but obviously the stock market and everything else that goes with it. So I think that's going to impact the January transfer window, right? I mean, if anything happens, you're going to wait late in the window, and that in itself, as we know, I mean, if you think that, as I do, that Manchester United are desperate, it's going to be even more desperate. So why pull the trigger on that, and why not wait until January? I mean, until the summer.
Chelsea.
Oh, center back, quality center back. I mean, Thiago Silva's still doing great, but I mean, that's a problem. White players in front. Yeah, I just think time with Chelsea is time. Don't you think? I mean, would I like to? I mean, they're not going to go after a new number 9 in this window, aren't they? I mean, I think Jackson deserves probably a little bit more time. I do think that some of these young players will start performing a little bit better. Another win. I think a consistency can go a long way here, where, to follow up on this Luton win, finally, maybe they go on a 2 or 3 game winning streak. They've bought so much. I mean, how much more can they possibly buy? Creativity in that midfield, I suppose. That's one player that, the one area. The name that they've gone after, and I forgot, and I think it's worth mentioning because Arsenal could use a player like that. I think to a degree, Liverpool could use a player like that. And the name of that player for Chelsea, Arsenal, and Liverpool is Michael Olise. On that right-hand side, you tell me. I know Liverpool are loaded, but I mean, Mo Salah, there's always that talk that, how maybe he'll leave, maybe he'll go elsewhere. You'd like to have a player that's capable. I mean, Saka could use a player that challenges him, right? Olise could play probably on both sides, but part of Arsenal's issue is that there's no time to ever rest these players. And Chelsea, I think, can use him as well. Olise out of Crystal Palace, I know he signed a new contract, but Palace will always sell. So this name, almost for any team, right? I mean, United could very well use him.
It's your dream transfer list. So
I would have Olise on the dream list for any of the teams that you've just mentioned, which is basically all top teams in the Premier League.
Okay, but the last one is, I do still have to mention it for whatever you would say, is Spurs.
Spurs, a center back. I mean, they do need it because, I mean, it's worrisome. I mean, Van de Ven will be fine. I think this is freakish. Romero, though, you worry about him with the injuries and suspension, his temperament. That's a bit of an issue. I think that's an area that they need. Conor Gallagher, I mean, I don't think he wants to leave Chelsea. I do think they need somebody more creative there, but I also understand why why Ange would want a warrior in that midfield, another warrior. I know they have them in Sar and Bissouma, but he's a worker bee, and I think in terms of pressing, counter pressing, he could be used to allow, say, James Maddison to do even more in terms of going forward, not worry in what's happening in behind, right? So if you want to be playing all competitions, I can see that. So I'll buy into that rumor. I don't know why Chelsea would do it. I'm sure that Conor Gallagher doesn't want to do it, but we all know how everyone is close to the financial fair play. That's one thing that we haven't mentioned with almost all these teams, that there's not a lot of wiggle room. So possible.
Yeah, well, his name obviously came up because we see him regularly, but he is still linked with a move away. But obviously, we see many names when it comes to the rumor.
And I kind of get that, and I don't want to say it about him because he works so hard. He's such, I mean, such an honest player. He's got all kinds of abilities, but Conor Gallagher still feels to me like a Crystal Palace type of player, right? And nothing against Crystal Palace, but even Spurs, he's a worker. I mean, you give him a task and he'll give you some extra, right? But I don't know if this is the sort of player that will open the doors for everybody. He is not a prolific goal scorer, as we all know, but there's an absolute role on just about any team for him. That's why I'm a little bit surprised that that Chelsea will consider it. But again, you have to remember, after spending so much money, Chelsea, and feeling that they still need to add to it, I can see how they may have to sell. And he's going to fetch good 40, 50 million pounds. So it kind of, in a roundabout way, makes sense.
Still only 23 as well. But we are into 2024. And thank you so much for being with us for the first PL Express of 2024. We'll be back next week to do it all over again. See you then.